All right, well, welcome everyone. I want to welcome you all to the first of a series of webinar series on the fabulous William H. Gross stamp collection that's being offered by Robert A. Siegel Auction Galleries. I'm Charles Shreve. I'm director of Siegel International in charge of our worldwide division, but I have a personal relationship with the Gross collection because I spent many years, over 30 years, helping Mr. Gross build this fabulous collection. I'm really proud and honored that he allowed me to be a part of it. Between the singles collection that's being sold as the fifth and final sale, and the previous four sales, together the five sales really represent one of the greatest holdings of United States philately in one person's hands ever. And just to be a part of it's pretty amazing. To my right is, many of you know, is Scott Trepel, the president and owner of Robert A. Siegel Auction Galleries. Scott, I consider to be one of the greatest philatelic experts alive today. And if you all have read the previous four Gross catalogs and you saw what was the content of those, what he writes is extraordinary. He has been working diligently in finalizing the sale for the singles collection, which will contain a tremendous amount of information. And I have to tell you that I never met anybody more astute and philately than he. So Scott will be joining in the conversation. And to my left is Larry Lyons, Executive Director of the Philatelic Foundation. Many of you know him. Larry and his staff have been here the last couple of days, expertising the top 100 lots of the sale. As some of you may have heard, we're splitting the sale on June 14th and 15th. The top 100 stamps from the collection will be sold on a Friday evening sale to make it special, including, of course, the fabled 1 cent D-grill. And then on Saturday, on Friday, that'll be at the Palace Hotel here in New York. And on Saturday at the new Collectors Club location, the remaining, I think, 250 lots, very nice stamps as well, will be sold at the Collectors Club. So why don't we get started? And I'm going to ask Larry, just from being here looking at all these stamps, give me your initial impressions.
It's a marvelous collection. It's an honor to see a complete collection. And it's astounding how many rare U.S. stamps there are. And they're all in this sale. Some of them one known, like some of them one known, some two known, like the Z Grill, but only one in collector's hands, other in the Miller collection. But what I found astounding is some of the colors on the stamps are vivid and the impressions are good and nice centering, and the special printings really talk to you and tell you this.
I don't know if the people watching know, but you built a stamp collection attempting to fill in all the spaces and all that. So more than just being an expert in the stamps, you know what it's like to collect these and try to hunt them down. And I remember in the early 90s when you were coming to every auction fighting for stamps. I think there was a 30-cent grilled banknote stamp that you wanted very badly and you got outbid on it. But it's amazing when you set out to fill the album what the obstacles are. Obviously the really super rare ones, but a lot of the little rarities, which I think are even some of the top 100.
Yes, and I was looking for well-centered stamps with good color, but only within my price range.
Sure.
So I was missing probably the top 100 stamps, but it had almost everything else.
Well, what Larry and his team are doing, and we decided that the top 100 stamps, while they almost all have certificates associated with them, past certificates, many 3 or 4, or in the case of the 1 cent Z-grill, 5 or 6 previous certificates. We're getting brand new certificates that will accompany the lots that are coming up. They will all have 2024 certificates. And on the bottom of the certificate, the submitter's name will be William H. Gross, so that you will forever have a stamp in your collection. If you happen to buy one of those top 100 stamps, the Gross name will be on the bottom of the certificate, giving it great provenance. At this point, I'm going to ask Scott, if I remember that his wife, Katie, said one time about you that if Scott could sell stamps just to other stamps, he'd be the happiest man alive because he loves stamps that much. And I think he has. If people ask me what are my personal favorites in the sale, I can't pick out one because I spent 30 years of my life doing it. But I'd like to hear from Scott. What are a couple of his favorites and why?
Well, Katie did say that. I'm not quite sure what she meant by it, but I think she meant I get along better with stamps and I get along better with people. If I have to pick my favorites, obviously my involvement with the 1 cent Z grill, which we can show you here. Number 5 on that. So the 1 cent Z grill, my involvement goes back to Bob Zollner, who contacted me long ago. I was at Christie's in the mid-'80s and said, I want to build a complete collection of United States stamps. And so I wrote him a long memo and explained all the obstacles to doing that. And they were all the rare grills, and almost miraculously, between the Peyton collection, which was the Island collection that came up in '86, and the sale of the 1 cent Z grill at Superior Stamp and Coining in Los Angeles, they all came up, and he was able to get them. And I got very involved in learning about grilled stamps and why they're so significant. And I'm asked a lot, what's a grill? Why is this so important? And the reason is they represent something big happening in the post office. And that was out of these fears that stamps were being cleaned and reused. And I don't even think the fears were justified. I think they blew this up for business reasons, but I'll get to the steel patent in a minute. But those grilled stamps were an experiment to try to prevent people from cleaning cancellations off of the stamps. And they came up with a lot of different variations of this. The first one was a disaster. The A grill covered the whole stamp, all the perforations were torn off, and we have a couple of them in here. And you can see what happens when you run a fully perforated stamp with a grill behind it. You tear it apart and pieces come off. So that didn't work. And the Z grill was one of the first production grills that were used to make stamps that went into post offices. And that's what makes them significant. And they were recognized as early as 1915 by a collector in Michigan named William Stevenson. And he started to write about them. And he discovered one 1 cent stamp with what he called the Z grill. And it's not shaped like a Z. It's got pyramids on the top, which I call them horizontal rooftops. And that grill distinguishes it from all the other grills. And he recognized it was very rare. He'd only seen one. And then about a year or two later, he found another. And those two are the only ones that have been found since 1915. And Stevenson's copy, his personal copy, went into the Miller collection, Benjamin K. Miller collection, and that was donated to the New York Public Library. And that left just one copy out there, and it didn't surface till 1957. And since then, it's been, I don't know, maybe the 1933 $20 gold eagle of philately, or even the 1913 nickel is worth. There's more of those than the 1 cent Z grill. But everybody who wants to complete a collection has to get this one stamp. And going back to the mid-'80s, when I went out to that Superior sale to represent Bob Zollner, he was determined to get it. And he just said, look, you got to get it. You have to pay what you have to pay. And I remember calling him up. The auction was in the evening. I woke him up and I said, you got it. He was so excited. He woke up his wife and said, we got it. And, that was the key to his collection. And I think from there on, he put all the pieces together and he was able to do it. And that, for you, it's the same experience chasing that stamp down.
Yeah, I had a little more disappointing experience trying to chase it down the first time.
Well, you got beat by a kid. What can I say? How did you ever, when you got it, it was the trade, the big swap, right? How did that come together?
Well, after we lost the stamp in the Zollner sale, bidding in 1998, I believe it was.
$935,000.
Yeah. And I decided, Mr. Gross gave me discretion, but when I saw I was bidding against a 12-year-old in the front of the room, I used discretion saying, I'm bidding against a 12-year-old, not knowing that it was Don Sunman's son. And I put down my hand. I couldn't get a hold of Mr. Gross. He was on a cruise or something at that time. And he was disappointed, but he says, we'll have another chance. And just serendipitously, The inverted Jenny plate block of 4 came up for sale, and Mr. Gross already owned, I think, 4 blocks of 4 of the inverted Jenny. And I was emailing him and saying, do you know the inverted Jenny block is coming up? But I said, you need another Jenny block like you need a hole in the head. And in the middle of the email, I said, I have an idea. Why don't we approach Don Sunman of Mystic Stamp, who had used the stamp for advertising purposes for many, many years? And why don't we propose a trade that if we buy the inverted Jenny plate block, that we trade it 1 up for the 1 cent Zegro? Don's a very astute businessman, and he kept saying no until about 5 minutes before the sale. And then we finally came to an agreement, knowing that we thought we'd have to pay around $3 million for the airmail invert plate block. We bought it for 2.97 million, I think. Most people thought, well, there's Mr. Gross again buying another inverted Jenny block of 4, unique plate block. But we already had a plan that a week later we did a big announcement. We created the biggest stamp swap of the century, trading the inverted Jenny for the 1 cent Zegro. That was exciting to Mr. Gross. It was the last stamp that he needed.
So it's been, this 1 cent Zegro hasn't been at auction since 1998.
Right.
Yeah. Now, I mean, to me, this is the key, the Lynch Pin, and I'm very curious whether a collector completing their collection will buy this, or whether a person who just loves the rarest thing in the world, the best sports card, the best watch, the best stamp, that they just chase down this. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yes, the philatelist in me hopes that a stamp collector buys it, but the auctioneer in me also hopes there'll be somebody who comes along and just, I have to have it for the very reason you say. It's a trophy piece. That stamp, the Philatelic Foundation has advertised, I don't know how many times. It's got to be
57 is the first, 1957, the first time.
There are many stamps here that have very early certificates,
Mhm.
and we haven't seen them in a very long time, so it was exciting to see.
Oh, yeah. The Zegro, every time it's bought and sold, I think we updated the certificate. So there's no question, if you want a complete United States stamp collection, not everybody can afford that stamp, but I know there's some people who dream about owning it. But there's some other stamps in the sale that are not as well known as being unique, or nearly so. Give me a couple samples.
Well, the 24-cent Continental,
Oh.
Scott 164. And it's such a strange number, because that number is specifically for this stamp. Maybe if another 24-cent on ribbed paper came up, they would have to say there's 2 of them, but there's not 2 of them. And this is the only one that represents Scott 164. So, really, it's rarer than a 1 cent Zegro. It is the only one known, the only one certified. And, if you have that empty space in your album, this is the only way to fill it. So that'll be interesting. When we sold that, and you bought it in the auction that we had years ago, I think it brought $300,000 or $400,000 then. And I don't know why it's not worth $1 million or $2 million now. I mean, I think after the 1 cent Zegro gets sold, the whole benchmark will be raised, and maybe that stamp will increase in value.
The stamp that it looks like is the number 153. And
Yeah.
we've gotten thousands of submissions of 153s, but I've tested them with the XRF equipment, and they all have the same paper and ink. Whereas the ribbed paper stamp, the 164, would test differently.
So it's distinctively different.
Distinctively different.
It's such a crazy circumstance the way it was created. So you had a National Banknote Company in 1870 given the printing contract, and they make 24-cent stamps. In 1873, the contract's going to go to a different printer, a whole different company, Continental. And Continental is required to print a certain number of stamps that's in their vault. They can show to the stamp agent and say, we have these on hand, and turn over. But what happened was that the agent and the Continental Banknote Company and the National Company, they worked out this deal where National got to offload what unsold supply they had to Continental. Continental put them in their vault after they'd already printed up some of their own stamps. Probably for the next few years, they're distributing all the ones that they had from National. And I don't know, a sheet, 2 sheets, whatever was in Continental's vault that they printed. got out somehow because we know this one stamp is on rib paper and they're the only printer that used rib paper. National didn't use it. It's a crazy circumstance. It sounds very technical. They look the same and all that, but to be able to say that this stamp is a Continental printing is a big deal. And it's a whole different space in the album. It's 164. So, if you're putting all the pieces of the puzzle together and you got them all, including the ones at Ziegler, if you don't have that 164 there, you can't really say it's complete.
I can tell you that, Bill Gross started off like everybody else with a simple stamp album and having the dream that he was going to fill every space in the album. And I think we've all had that same dream of filling every space, but nobody can ever do it. And while he was trying to fill every space, he spent a lot of time buying some other things to augment his collection. Everyone knows about his fabulous 1847 collection and multiples and postal history. But his first love was completing the singles collection. I can tell you just one little story that when he asked me to come out and pick up all of his United States stamps, I was so excited. And I told Scott I'm going out to pick up everything. And he wasn't even at his house. And I was there packing up everything. And he sent me an email in the middle of it. He says, take everything but the singles collection. I went, oh, what other singles collection? That was years ago. And I thought, oh man, I don't know if I'm going to live long enough to be able to sell what I also believed was one of the greatest collections ever put together. And it was recently decided that it was time to let other people have the chance to do what he did and maybe collect in a different way. Like Bill liked to have a mint single of every stamp if it exists mint. So you'll see Postmaster provisionals in the sale that are unbelievable in mint condition. Millbury provisional, St. Louis bears that might be unique or close to being a unique mint.
Let's show that Alexandria provisional.
Yeah, there's a good example.
Because that's one that, and it's got a great story behind it, but that's one of the unused ones you're talking about.
Right. And, other people might want to put together a collection that's used stamps only, which of course is the 1 and 15-cent Ziegler are and so on. So people have the opportunity to create something that's a little bit different than what Mr. Gross did, but it's all comes down to filling those empty spaces in your album, every collector's dream.
Yeah. Larry, did you get to see the Alexandria today or is that for tomorrow?
Tomorrow. Yeah.
So, well, this stamp, it fascinates me because we all knew it existed for years and years. We knew it from a picture in the Ferrari catalog in the 1920s. And it was bought by Henry Lapham and disappeared for a long, long time. Now, Henry Lapham, he was a big collector in the late teens and 20s. I read somewhere that when he died in the 1930s, he was worth $200 million.
That's a lot of money.
That's more money than Bill Gross has. I mean, that's like billions, $5 billion today. So he had a lot of money and built a great collection. But it was sold, most of it was sold privately by a dealer named Warren Coulson. And on the back of this stamp, you see two things. You see the signature of Leonidas Durbin, who's a dealer in Philadelphia that bought it in 1879, and he put a date on it. And then you see tiny WHC, which is Warren Coulson's hand stamp that he put on it when he handled the Lapham collection. And after Lapham, it disappeared. Nobody knew where it was. And for many years, if anybody referred to it, they just showed it from the Ferrari catalog. But it had been bought by Senator, well, he became a senator, Peter Frelinghuysen. And Frelinghuysen's a famous name in New Jersey. In fact, if you watch The Sopranos, you know that he drives down Frelinghuysen Boulevard. But that stamp disappeared in the Frelinghuysen family, and Peter Frelinghuysen collected it as a kid, a teenager, and he kept collecting and collecting, and that didn't come to market until, what was it, 2012 or so. And what a collection. There's a number of things in this sale that come out of the Frelinghuysen collection. But in researching that, I found out that it had actually been found on a letter and removed. And the letter went, the stamp went to France to join Ferrari's collection, and the letter disappeared. And it came up on its own in the 60s and was written about. And they knew the stamp had been removed from it, but they didn't know where the stamp was. And when we finally got the Frelinghuysen collection and I learned about this letter, I traced it down to a collector, and it turns out his property was sold at auction, and some of it was donated to a museum. Some of it was sold to a guy who sells on eBay. Anyway, I thought I was going to get the letter. I thought I was so close on the trail. I even had these people down in the library looking through the files to find this letter, but they haven't found it. But it's out there somewhere. So you get a double bonus with this stamp. You have an unused example, and I think it's really the finest that there is. And you have the potential one day of having the letter that goes with it that was separated from it in 1878.
When that Frelinghuysen sale came out, you always got excited when I showed up at the auctions. I wondered why when I was building the collection, and I had my eye on that stamp. I wasn't going to let it go. And Mr. Gross always had a mantra in building his collection. If a big collection comes up, it's a special moment in time, and he would say, seize the moment. He also said hit it hard was another thing. Meant we normally come up with a budget and a limit on things, but when something really special came up, he was kind to me to allow me to use my judgment to buy stamps that are irreplaceable. And that's how he built the biggest collection or the best collection ever. You have to seize the moment, and he did.
Yeah, well, if I won the lotto tomorrow and could retire and just be a collector, that would be on my list.
Oh, yeah, sure.
What's on your want list in this?
Yeah, what did you see today that you liked?
I know what it is, but I don't even know if you saw it today.
I saw it today.
Okay.
In all those years when I was bidding on things, sometimes I would bid 25 times the starting bid on an item and not win the lot. And I go, okay, I'll wait for another one. And then 20 years would go by and I would not see another one. So sometimes these items, your comment of you got to seize the moment to buy some of these things, because there may not be another moment. The people that buy these things are just caretakers for the material to be passed on to someone else in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And no one really owns them forever, but they own them for decades at a time, 20, 30, sometimes 40 years and more. So the time when another one when it will come up again, sometimes there's a long period of time. And you have to seize the moment and pick your items. A couple of people have asked me, what should I bid on in this sale? And I would say, well, you're going to want something from the gross sale, but find something that excites you and goes with other material that you have, or fits in with your collection, or adds to it in the proper way. And we're talking about items that are quite expensive on a lot of these items.
Relatively inexpensive, but
Yeah,
compared to other collecting.
compared
In fact, I always say
to-
we have to keep up with Michael Jordan's sneakers. So I have my hopes up. I think the last pair brought what, $8 million or something? Yeah,
That's a lot of
I
money
wanna-
for a pair of sneakers.
4 million a sneaker. That's a lot. No, I think stamps have been terribly undervalued compared to coins and art and all that. I mean, to think that you could own the only copy of something available to collectors in a collecting area that's been around since the 1850s or 60s. And I don't even think it's, I mean, what is it at $5 million? What is it compared to the buyer's premium on a Jackson Pollock painting? I mean, it's just crazy. I look at the realizations for art and cars and watches and things like that. And I don't know, because I'm partial to stamps, I think, we've got the bargains. But we'll see. Markets are markets. We'll see what happens on June 14th and 15th.
If you, with the change of the way we auction stamps now, I can say that I ran the first live public auction on the internet, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's, that now is very common. It's changed the way people attend and participate in stamp auctions. If you were ever thinking of attending an auction, and this isn't a commercial pitch, it's something I believe in and I think would be special, is to attend the gross sale on the Friday night, June 14th, and be there in person to witness history, to see what the prices are. There's nothing like an auction where there's, you see a room full of people, you'll see television cameras there, you'll see the lineup of staff members on the telephone, just like at Sotheby's or Christie's sale bidding with people bidding, and the excitement of seeing something go from $100,000 to $1 million or more, or whatever it is. It's nothing like that. We don't get to see that anymore. Now we're sitting at, when we conduct auctions, we're talking to an empty room, but there's hundreds of people online bidding. We're grateful for that, but attending the sale in person, if you can make it, bring someone, your spouse or somebody who can enjoy New York and attend the sale. I think it'll be quite a special occasion.
Yeah, when I started auctioneering in 1982, David Bathurst was chairman of Christie's, and he used to say, "Auction is theater," and he would make that room come alive. He just pitched people against one another. The subtlety of the competition, pace of the auction. I mean, he was a genius at it. When you get a full room and you get an auction that's really, well, the first gross treasure sale,
Yeah.
that was a packed room and a lot of action, and it was fun. As an auctioneer, we both love to have that kind of thing.
When I attended the first real important stamp auction for Mr. Gross, it was a 1993 sale at Christie's of Rio Ishikawa's stamp collection. Room was packed, and the auctioneer was a rarity for that time, a woman, Barbara Strongen.
A friend of mine.
And she knew how to work that room and make it exciting. And I was bidding for Mr. Gross anonymously, and they didn't know who was bidding for it. I'm in the back of the room, and she finally says, "I should start paying attention to you." in the room. And one time she missed my bid. She said, "Oh, excuse me, I'm new at this," teasing me. She knew what to do. Scott likes to harass people during the live auction. I find it very entertaining. So let's see if he does that.
There's nothing like a little shame or guilt in the next one, or making them realize what life's going to be like without the stamp when somebody else is taking it away.
But you both know how to pause in an auction and let the people think for a few more seconds, and without hammering it down quickly. And give the people a chance to go for another bid.
Well,
I don't want, we're going to have a series of these gross seminars. I think the next one is going to be in 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. And we'll delve into more aspects about more specifics, which Scott loves to talk about some other things. We haven't even talked about the V grills or the.
Yeah, are we out of time?
We're getting close to the time for questions.
In comedy, they hold up the light, the red light, and your 10 or 15 minutes is up.
We will.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna do that.
I will. I just want to say that I know many of you who are out who registered and are watching us. So we'll be out at the Westpex Stamp Show in San Francisco in a couple of weekends. On the Friday morning, late morning, I'm doing a presentation. I think if you want to know the real inside story about Bill Gross, you'll want to attend. I'm going to be talking about Bill Gross as a person, as a collector, but someone who is fortunate enough to know him personally. And I know him differently than what is written about him in the press. And I think you'll find it fascinating what goes behind building the genesis of a great collector. And I think you'll find it interesting. But let's take some questions if there are any. Okay.
First of all, Scott, do I have the slide for the back of the 1 cent zebra? Is it,
Yes.
did we
I don't think we have that.
Oh.
We have the back of the Miller copy. But today when we were throwing this together, I didn't see the back of the but it's on our website somewhere in the census section of our website, siegelauctions.com, and you go to resources. There's a census and encyclopedia, so you can always see it online there. I don't have it to show right now.
Can you tell the different papers between the Continental and National printings by eyesight? If not, how do you distinguish the difference in papers?
Between what?
On the Continental and National printings, how do you tell the difference
The 164.
in the papers if you can't see it by eyesight?
So you're talking about the 164, not special printings, right? When you take that 24-cent stamp and you hold it up to glancing light, cross lighting, you see the ridges of the vertical patterns of the ribbed paper in the surface of the stamp. And there are 2-cent Continental stamps and a whole bunch of officials. In fact, they seem to use that paper a lot on officials. So you can always see that as a comparison for ribbed paper. And once you get used to spotting it, it's obvious. And there isn't a collection I handle that I don't take the 24-cent stamps and cross-link. The people from the PF are shaking their heads. Yes, every time I get a 24-cent stamp, I look. If it's grilled, you don't have to because you know it's national. But if it's not grilled, I always take a look because you don't want to miss. If I ever sold a 24-cent stamp as a 153 national printing and it turned out to be a Continental, what is it, seppuku, the Japanese form of suicide? Yeah, in this room with a webinar going. Yeah, I could never forgive myself. So I always check out 24 cents.
What year was the Z-Grill printed?
1868, the very beginning of 1868, they put the Z-Grill on the machine to make regular production grills. After their experiments with all over the A grill and the C grill, in 1867, they settled on the Z and the D to start with, and they didn't use it for very long. They replaced those rollers or flat plates, whatever they were, very quickly, and they shifted to E and F grills, which are the more common ones.
316, 317, and 321 outside the Miller collection, are they on cover? I just did a quick power search and I didn't see any thoughts.
You got one from me? So 316 is the 1-cent vertical coil, and 321 is the 2-cent shield vertical coil, and they were furnished to 2 companies in these trials where the companies were trying to sell or get a contract for their patented machines that would be vending machines in all the post offices throughout the country. And Parkhurst in Indianapolis had the 1-cent and the 2-cent. There was a company in Washington, D.C., German company actually, that opened up an American branch, and they had the vertical coils that were supplied. But the surviving examples are very rare. You can see on our website the census of pairs and singles. Some of the pairs have been split into singles to sell to different people. And right now there's 2 cents on cover. So there are 2 covers known with that, both used in Indianapolis. And then there's 2 postcards with 1-cent stamps. And Larry and I have been debating this back and forth about whether they're really 316s, the Scott number for the 1-cent coil, or they're privately perforated by Parkhurst. Certainly not going to drag this webinar down with a big debate over that, but I think that's the long answer to your question. I think that's the question.
What is the Scott number of the Z-Grill?
Oh, it's 85A, isn't it?
Yes.
You're asking me?
It's
It's 85. Yes.
85A.
I have a tattoo on my upper arm that says 85.
85A.
It probably is well known as C3A.
Yeah.
That the 164 E is different from the 153. Can you elaborate on that?
I have not tested the ink to see that it's different, but the XRF X-ray analysis would go right through the stamp and test the paper and the ink together and give you the spectrum. So the one with ribbed paper would be different, but I have probably tested several hundred 153s and they all fall into the exact same range. So someone came to me many years ago and said, maybe by plate wear I can determine what is a 164. And he provided me with more than 100 153s that were very warm, but they all had the same paper and ink. And none of them were ribbed paper.
Yeah. Well, that's the crazy thing about 153 and 164. It used to be, if they had 164 listed and didn't specify it's the stamp, you could take any 24-cent purple stamp and say it's a 164 because you couldn't exclude it. You couldn't come up with criteria that would exclude the stamp. It's only when they defined it by this ribbed paper that you could exclude other stamps which may or may not have been printed by Continental. I don't know that all of the quantity Continental printed was on ribbed paper. So maybe some of it was regular paper, maybe some ribbed. I don't even know if the ink's different. We could certainly send it down there to test the ink. Let's see if it is different. People have always described the shade as bluish purple, but I don't that purple 24-cent stamp comes in a lot of different shades, but I think we should bring it down. We'll bring it down and you can put it under the magic machine.
If anyone has any more questions, you can type them into the Q&A and we'll get you an answer.
All right.
When is the catalog coming out?
That's a good question. We are just waiting on the final certificates from Philatelic Foundation, which will be freshly issued in the next couple of days, making sure that they match our descriptions. The catalog is 99.9% written, and there it is. And
That's a hard.
now, just like the previous 4 gross sale catalogs, we're producing an extraordinarily luxurious catalog that hardbound with the Dutch Dragon. Those take time, but to get people excited, we're going to put the entire sale online, probably the end of next week, just before the Westpec show. So we can talk about the sale with people who attend Westpec. So it'll be online. Then the catalog, the printed catalog itself, should be out about the middle of May 15th or so.
In the panel's opinion, are there likely any more 1-cent Z-grills or 164s out there that haven't been identified, or given the passage of time, have they probably all been identified?
Well, from someone who was spending somebody else's money and real money, I felt very confident, particularly on the 1-cent Z-grill, that after 100+ years, that there have been a bunch of them submitted to the PF. None of them come close to being considered genuine. I feel as confident as you can be that it's the only one that'll ever be found. 164s is a more relatively recent discovery. But many people have tried, and they've looked at a lot of those stamps. These are experimental stamps, or separate paper got involved, and they were issued in very minute quantities. And I felt comfortable buying these stamps for Mr. Gross, and many other collectors more astute than me bought them and with confidence.
I have a firm recommendation. Everyone should sell their stamp collection through Siegel auction galleries, and we will thoroughly evaluate all 1-cent blue stamps to make sure they either are or aren't Siegels. It's the only way to know. It's got to go through Siegel. Anyone else could let it slip.
I don't want to, insult Scott, but Scott and I are both slightly old war horses in the stamp business. There's never been a collection that excites us more. Be able to sell a collection like this is an extraordinary honor. And
you never saw my collection in a national album.
I saw Larry Lyons' collection. He had the greatest U.S. collection in the Harris album that I ever saw.
You had a Harris album?
He had the stamps in the Harris album. But anyway,
and 8 pages.
Yeah, but be that as it may, there'll be other webinars coming up. We'll get more into some of the details about some of the stamps in the sale. Have other guest panelists. Do you have one more question? Sure.
Any theories as to why the Z-grill wasn't used for too long? I thought it was much more resilient than the A and B grills.
It was replaced by the Z and the D grill. Okay, so these machines are running grilling stamps. They have a D on one machine, I think, and a Z on the other, and they swap out the devices. And so, if I remember my research the correct way, the Z was replaced by the F grill, and the D was replaced by the E grill. And the reason why I think that is because when you look at the multiples, and you see the extra grills and the selvage of the stamp on one of them, and I think it's the Z and the F, it's always to the sides. And on the D and the E, it's always at the top of the bottom, if I remember correctly. So that means that when they're feeding these in, they're rolling in a different direction. So you get more grills and the selvage at the top of the bottom on one machine more on the sides on the other machine. So I think they had the Z and the D on the machines for a very brief period of time. It could have been just a week or two. And for whatever reason, they replaced them with these other ones that made this E and the F growths. It sounds crazy to, we don't have any records. There's no production records. We're just, we have to look at the stuff and speculate. We have some production records, but they're just making stamps. They didn't think about any of this. They just wanted to make good stamps, and they didn't care about writing down what they were doing. And there was no closed TV surveillance at that time, so we can't look at what was going on in the plant. So we just kind of reconstruct these events from what we see.
That's it. Well, thank you all
Thank
very
you all.
much for joining us, and have a pleasant evening. And we look forward to seeing you at a future webinar and hopefully at the sale on June 14th and 15th.